Last week, the Pew Research Center, a nonpartisan U.S. think tank, released more results from its ongoing survey of Americans' attitudes toward China, including U.S. government policies involving China. We'll discuss the new findings with China Daily columnist Chen Weihua and veteran journalist Joe Boris in this week's Across America talk.
Yes, I think it's cooperative but also competitive at the same time.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Across America Talk with China Daily columnist Chen Weihua and veteran journalist Joe Boris. Welcome both. So I'm not quite sure about your impressions after you finished reading the 40-page research. I was actually quite surprised soon after I started reading. First off, let's take a quick look at some of the stats here. 55% of U.S. general public support building a strong relationship with China, while 84% of experts do, while 49% of experts believe U.S. should be tough with China on economic and trade matters. 56% of the public want this. So let's first start with Weihua. Why is there the difference in views between American public and experts?
Well, I think, this actually conforms to previous surveys. I think the difference between the two different groups, experts and general public, is expected because as experts, which include scholars, military personnel, and also sort of a news media, professional, trade, business people, these are often the well-educated, relatively speaking, well-traveled, better-informed group, so they know the real situation much better, while the general public, I think, they tend to be influenced much more by sort of the mass media, on TV and the newspapers. As journalists, we know that the news media tend to focus on the negative sides, and that's the nature of journalism, unfortunately. So if you just rely on news media for information, the image of China you get tend to be very negative. Especially in this election year, everything about China is sort of bashing criticism. So that's no surprise to me.
Okay, and also here is some other interesting finding. 52% of public consider China's emergence as a world power to be a major threat to the U.S. Based on the large amount of U.S. government debt owned by China, job losses, and the trade deficit. How would you characterize the perceived threat expressed by over half of the American public, Joe?
It's interesting because although there are a number of instances or areas of policy that Americans cite, those respondents cite in expressing their concerns, including trade policy, currency policy, and the outsourcing of jobs, and nor is there seemingly a lot of concern about a military buildup. It seems that Americans' concerns are predicated, I guess, not to be, it's to be understood at this time of a weak economic recovery, but their concerns are fixated on the economy. And China is seen sometimes conveniently, a little too conveniently, and maybe not fairly, as or a factor, I should say, in that assessment. It doesn't mean it's the only, China's emergence as a world power is certainly not the only thing that's perhaps constraining the American economy. We know that the large fiscal deficit is certainly a factor, but China's enormous holdings of U.S. sovereign debt are a part of that. So again, I think rational concern balanced against maybe some concerns that are a bit overblown.
And also, Weihua, despite the concerns, 55% of Americans say it is important that the U.S. build a strong relationship with China. Only 15% describe China as an enemy, though 2/3 regard it as a competitor. So how do you explain the paradox of Americans wanting a strong relationship with a country that they don't actually feel easy with?
Yeah, I think that's why, even American politicians will describe the relationship as a very complicated, relationship, because there are many facades. Sometimes they describe we will, we are partners, and sometimes they even want to think we are adversaries. I mean, as you said, we are competitors in the fields, and the economic arena. I mean, China and the U.S. Compete in some area, but at the same time, the two economies are very complementary, you would say. The U.S. is the leading developed country, and China is the leading developing country. So, as I mentioned, the two countries are very interdependent economically. That means we depend on each other to thrive, in the future. So that means we want a good relationship, and we don't want to, sort of destroy it. No one will gain by playing a mutual destructive games. At the other hand, in this especially bad economic time, people tend to amplify the problems and the sort of the issues between two countries. What you mentioned, the deficits, debt, or maybe outsourcing, or even maybe issues about IPR protection. These issues have been amplified. I would say, we need to sit down and discuss and solve the problem, to prefer negotiation rather than confrontation. I think right now I see both leaders, the leaders of the two countries are relatively cool-headed. I think they prefer negotiation, even, we have WTO cases against each other, but no one, I think, want to gain, in confrontational games.
Yeah, which means only a friendly relationship between U.S.-China can lead to a win-win situation between the two nations.
Yes, I think it's cooperative but also competitive at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I also heard some experts used to say that the China-U.S. relationship can never be too good, but can never be too bad either.
Let's hope that's the case.
Okay, so last but not least, there is one more question for you, Joe. Looking toward the November presidential election in the U.S. barely 6 weeks from now, any predictions on how China will factor into the upcoming initial debate between President Barack Obama and Mitt Romney?
Well, I think we have to expect that, per usual, there probably will be limited discussion during the debates and even the campaign rhetoric surrounding the debates and other forums leading up to November's election. That said, you'll probably hear an emphasis, if on anything, on previous comments that Mitt Romney has made, that the Obama administration will be, and the Obama campaign and the president himself will be happy to point out as perhaps unhelpful in their view toward the sustainability of the relationship, which we've described as in its crucial importance. Mm-hmm. I don't think you'll probably hear much made of distinct differences that would emerge depending on which candidate should win in November. You'll probably hear a desire, if we hear much about China per se as a foreign policy objective. Of course, this is a very economic-focused election, as you would expect in difficult times in the U.S. But I think to the extent that it comes up, it will probably, a discussion of the differences will focus more on the similarities and of whichever party is in power, in control of the White House.
Yeah, I think, the China factor is going to be important in this foreign policy debate. And the only other factors you think are important, Iran's nuclear issue, maybe the Middle East now, since the attack on the diplomatic compound. But I think,
Israel.
Romney, and Obama has both tried to be tough on China in their rhetorics. I think we should pay attention to that because we care about the relationship. At the same time, we should not pay too much attention because election rhetoric tend to go away after these people getting elected. So let's get fingers crossed. I think, this will not be too bad, given the rhetoric at the moment.
All right, thank you both for offering your great insight, and thank you for coming to our show. This is all for today's Across America Talk. Thanks for watching and being with us. We'll see you next time.